everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Today's webinar is When Good Deals Go Bad. I have Paul Schultz here with me. Say hello, Paul.
Hello, Paul. Good afternoon, everybody. Glad to have you aboard.
Hey, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
How you doing?
Wow, we heard a voice come
yes,
back.
the voice.
That was nice.
I like it. Keep talking.
All
we
right.
love the interaction.
Well, let's get started. Something's missing. Today we're going to be talking about CITs and what causes them, how we can maybe keep them from happening, and some tips that we can work with. You know, things that are missing in deals, you know, signature, form, stipulations, proof of income, proof of residence, cosigner, correct payoff, the right check amount, made out correctly, and the list goes on and on and on. There can be a lot of things that keep us from being able to bill a deal, right, Paul?
Exactly. The worst thing that can happen is you have that deal that you put together, you worked hard, and you got, you have a, $3,000 back end, and everybody's high-fiving, and then you go to book the deal, and there's stuff missing, and they miss signing this that's critical, and you have trouble funding, and the people come in and back up, and they bring an outside lien into it, you end up
okay, thanks, Paul. I think we got it. All right. Jeez. Paul's in a rare mood today. I don't know what to expect. I'm a little scared. Well, let's keep going.
They didn't ration the coffee this morning, obviously.
All right. First of all, I want to talk about the fresh fish rule. So what is the fresh fish rule? That means deals are like fresh fish. After 3 days, they go bad. And we want to be able to, what we really want to think about is we have to have a process in place that allows us to keep track of these deals and make adjustments, get on it, prioritize so that the deals get billed and are in accounting within 3 days. No more than 3 days, 36 hours max. Here's the thing: when you have a deal that's got an issue, it's not going to get cleaned up by itself. We have to do something. Now, I don't know how many of you have a process in your store right now, like a create a deal, save a deal, CIT meeting, something like that happening. At UES, we want to see that happen every day. We want to have a create a deal or a save a deal meeting every single day. And just a quick overview of what's going on there before we move on is it's a meeting where we're looking at bringing a chain of accountability to all the activities in the dealership from the previous day, and then looking at what we've got going on today. So we're talking about all the people that came into the store, all the phone calls that came in, all the internet leads that came in, any deals that were written, any customers that were written up but didn't buy. Any deals that were delivered but not billed, so the CIT meeting really is part of a bigger part of the chain of accountability. But if you're not going to do that, then at least do the CIT meeting every day to just look at deals that are floating and that sort of thing. Paul and I work with a large dealer group that will remain nameless, but we're looking at the 17th day, 18th day of the month now. And as of yesterday, this was a store that does, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of close to 300 deals a month. And, we couldn't tell if they had how many of those deals they had booked, but they should have somewhere around 120 deals at this point of the month. And less than half of those were billed. So that means they had that many deals, almost 60 deals floating or in between F&I and accounting. 60.
Do the math.
And that's a lot.
60 deals times just $20,000 is what, John?
A lot.
1.2 million?
Yeah, something like that.
I don't know about you. I don't have that in my account.
Well, we're going to talk about that in a second. But the point is that, if there's a deal in our office or it's what, we call float or the deal's not billed, we've got to be on it and be thinking about what we can do to make that happen. So when's the best time to deal with an issue? The time is now. Procrastination, putting it off, it's not going to go away. We got to deal with it. We got to deal with it right away. And if you don't do that and you let them build up, that's when you get a contracts in transit problem. And so let's talk about it. What's the big deal? Why do contracts in transit matter? Well, one of the main responsibilities of an F&I person that we talk about is certainly we want to talk about delivering the deal, but it's also cash flow. There's very few places in the dealership that can have as large an impact on cash flow as the F&I office. You know, when we think about it, let's talk about that for a second. Frozen cash is bad. If I'm putting more cash out than I'm bringing in, that's a negative cash flow problem, and cash is the lifeblood to every business. And if I don't have it, it's a bad thing. So what are we talking about? Well, on every car deal, you know, once the car is delivered, the dealership starts spending money. They start writing checks. They pay off the car. They pay off the trade. They're paying for operations, you know, payroll, things like that are coming out of that cash. So in a typical car deal, you know, with a trade, I mean, what's the average price of a car? Somewhere around $32,000, I think. So if you say the trade's worth half of that, let's just call that $16,000. You're instantly, you're paying off almost 50 grand is going out on a car deal. And that doesn't matter if I've gotten paid for it or not. I've got to pay off the trade to get the title, and I've got to pay off my floor plan, usually within 36 hours. You know, and most of the time it happens instantly. So cash flow is a big deal, and it's the #1 concern when it comes to CITs. That's why when they start to pile up on our desk, we start hearing from the general manager or the dealer, and people start getting nervous about it.
As they should.
So how do we keep contracts in control from getting out of control? Contracts in transit from getting out of control. And I don't know about you, but there's, you know, depending on how long you've been in F&I, there was a time somewhere, hopefully it's not now, but there was a time where there was a lot of stuff sitting on your desk that needed to get cleaned up. And it wasn't going well. So we're going to talk about some things that you might be able to do to keep that feeling of being out of control from happening. So let's just kind of define what I'm talking about when I say a contract in transit, because everybody has different explanations of what it is. I call it deals written and not delivered. So the customer and the sales desk agreed to a deal, and for whatever reason, it hasn't been delivered. Could be needing another party there, could be somebody, but I got a deal sitting in F&I, and I don't have you know, and I can't deliver it.
You can't book it to accounting.
Right, it's stuck. There's deals written and delivered but not approved. And that's a deal that we spotted. It's a deal that, you know, could be somebody that I think is going to be easy and to get to sell the paper, and I've got it sitting there, and for whatever reason it just needs to be put together and sent in. I need an approval, or you know, I've already got an approval, but I've been busy, so the deal's just sitting there on my desk waiting to be broken down and then sent off to accounting. And then we have deals that are delivered and returned for omissions and errors. And those are never fun. Because we thought we were done with the deal and it comes back. We're lucky if it comes back from accounting with an issue, but if it comes back from a lender with an issue and we didn't get it funded, that's a problem.
Every time you see one of those, think about one of those vehicles that has that backup thing that goes off. Because that's what's happening to you.
Yeah, it's not a good situation. So when processing any documents in F&I, #1 rule is what? Touch it once. That's got to be our goal. And you hear that, but you know, how do we go about that? How do we make one touch happen? Usually, it equates to a couple of things. It's our process and discipline that we have in F&I. Now, you know, we've got quite a few people on today, and with various degrees of experience in F&I. And I will say this. Everybody's got their process in F&I once the customer left on how we do things. I personally I want to break that deal down as quickly as I possibly can. As a matter of fact, I kind of want to break it down during the deal. And what I mean by that is that I put the paperwork together in groupings after the customer signs. I'm not creating a big pile. I'm putting together my title work, my lending, everything's put together kind of separately so that when the customer leaves, I've got it almost ready to go. I've just got to kind of put a few things together, and the deal's done. The best time to break down a deal, we think, is right after you did it if you have the time. Certainly there are customers waiting, but when you think about it, how long does it take, Paul?
A minute, maybe two, to break it down, to do the initial breakdown. And if you do that breakdown during the customer, while the customer's sitting there, especially if you're setting up those sequence piles while you're doing that, or immediately after, just break them down in 3 piles. DMV, the bank, and the rest for the dealership. You'll start learning to see that paper, that one piece of paper is missing. You can grab with the customer before they get away.
I'm glad you said that, Paul, because that speaks to consistency. You know, one of the things whenever we're dealing with paperwork and funding and things like that is that it's really important to follow the same process over and over and over again, because you'll by doing that, you'll know something's missing. You'll see it. It'll trigger. You know, it's not going to trigger that night when you're at home trying to sleep and you go, oh, I didn't get that one form signed. Oh, whatever. And I don't know about you, but when I first started in F&I, there were nights where I was still doing deals in my sleep. But we don't want to do that. So the consistency of process makes a big difference, because that repetition is our friend. Discipline. I'm going to break the deal down. I know there's a customer waiting. This will take a minute, but I'm going to get it done. The discipline to process is important as well.
People run on routine and habit. So if you make that your routine and your habit, you're going to the best functioning F&I managers, the most consistently top performers, are the ones that have those good habits, those good routines that they follow every single time.
You know, one of the things that we tell our customers is when we're introducing ourselves to the customers and we're kind of going through what we do, the first thing we say is to make sure your paperwork is complete and accurate. So customers will understand they don't want to have to re-sign. They don't want to come back in to redo things. So before we let the customer go, I think it's a good idea to cross-check and double-check one more time. Let me go through this paperwork real quick. Yes, I have the signatures where I need them. Yes, they're right. So that before they leave, I know I have everything I need. Same goes for customers that have some challenges, or the callbacks have stipulations. When's the best time to get a stip? Right now. And if we don't get it now, that's a problem, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. So, check twice, submit once. That's
kind of like building something, isn't it?
Yeah, well, trust me, I've got a lot of scrap board at home. Deals written and not delivered, double check the callback and make sure you're meeting all the requirements prior to delivery. I see that happen a lot of times where there's one odd little thing that they want and we missed it.
And highlight it on the callback so you don't miss it.
Well, Paul and I are, how do we say it? We're seasoned, so we do a lot of highlighting so we don't forget and miss things. But you know what? When you're really busy and you're going along, it's not a bad idea to get into that habit, because when we see those things that are a little different, highlight it. That way we remember and we won't forget. Deals written and not delivered. These are spots. Let's call them spot deliveries. Slow down and make sure you got everything correct. Be a part of that transaction and, be a part of that approval if you can. Hey, I'm confident this is going to happen, and get it done the right way the first time. Deals delivered and returned for omission and errors. These go right to the front of the list. The thing about these deals is they should be prioritized. A couple of things you want to do. Don't delegate with these deals. Don't say, hey, I'm a salesperson, I need this, or, I need you to go get this for me. You have to stay engaged on these, and you have to drive the follow-up. You have to drive it. Better yet, make the phone calls yourself. Get those commitments. Did you call Mr. Smith? Yeah. Did he answer? No. If we're delegating those things to a salesperson or another person, we have to wait. And then we have to go check. And sometimes we get busy and we forget, and time goes by, and that fresh fish rule starts to happen. I see, Paul and I, as we're out in dealerships, we're seeing something that really has been interesting. We're starting to see CITs be an issue again, more consistently than ever before. I remember, it wasn't that, I guess it was, but gosh, 2010, 2011, I'd give you $100 if you could find a CIT in a store. They just weren't there because business wasn't great, and everybody was chasing a deal, and they needed that cash, and you couldn't find a CIT. Now business is good, and volume is good, and we're starting to see more and more of it, and it's something that is a problem. So,
that last category, deals delivered and returned, that's like that old smelly fish nobody wants to mess with, but the one that you absolutely have to prioritize because it is absolutely not going away.
And at the end of the day, it's your fault. I mean, it's your responsibility. You can't say that's not my fault. You delivered the deal.
And this is where I say you really want to call in the cavalry, circle the wagons. Get in your manager's meeting. You should be having a minimum 3 a week, or as John said, every day, a save a deal combination CIT meeting. That has to be a priority for all the managers, not just the F&I department. Otherwise, we're not getting the correct buy-in from all levels and the kind of commitment we need in order to get those deals funded. Because everybody was raising their hands, let's put it in the road, let's put it in the road, spot it. But now it's time to make the rubber stay in the road and get everything put together so the bank will fund it.
And that's an important component to any CIT meeting of any kind, is that sales and F&I have to be a part of that. That can't be something that is just the general manager and F&I. Everybody who touched that deal, I'm not talking every manager that touched that deal, needs to be involved in that meeting. And then the last thing here is, time is critical, so do it now. So let's talk about this, Paul. We were talking about WEOs and UOs, and yesterday Paul and I were having a conversation about this, and we were talking about WEOs and some of the things that, when we're in F&I, that we may owe the customer, and we have to document so that we're not being taken advantage of and that sort of thing. And then Paul brought up something that I really liked, and I wanted him to talk about it a little bit today, is that WEOs are things that, we're looking for from, that we owe the customer. But there are many times where the customer owes us things as well. So Paul, talk about the UO.
One of the dealerships I was in, we changed our WEO from WEO/UO, WEO/UO, and we documented everything that certainly we owe the customer. We owe them floor mats, we owe them, a little dangly Chi-Chi ball for their rearview mirror. But the other side was that the customer owed us things, like their trade title. They frequently don't bring their trade title. They don't bring their second set of keys. They don't bring this or that. There's something missing out of the deal that they owe us. That should go on that form as well, and they need to sign it, and you need to put some time restraints on it. So if the customer's going to bring back their second set of keys, then you need to say, okay, by Friday, they're going to bring back their keys so that they have some urgency behind it. Same thing with their title. That was one of the things I used to run into constantly. And I would take a deposit on their credit card and say, okay, it's $58.50. If you don't bring your title by Friday, we're going to hit your credit card for $58.50. You know what? More people started bringing their titles in on a timely basis, same with keys and everything else. So enjoin the customer to that document at a higher level, and you'll get a lot more out of it, and especially if you have secondary steps that are needed and that sort of thing. List those things and get them to sign them. Put a date on them.
One of the things about those secondary steps, too, is that you got to double-check those to make sure they're going to be approved. I actually was in a dealership where they wanted proof of roof, proof of residency, and they asked if a power bill would be okay, and they brought in a past due power bill.
Notification, your power's being turned off.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that we've got good steps.
And check those before you send them blindly to the bank, too.
Okay. So, some CIT best practices while we're talking about it. Have a process and do it the same way. E-contracting, we haven't talked about that, but that's a CIT best practice. Any opportunity we have to utilize e-contracting, we should. And the reason is, it keeps us from making mistakes. Most, systems won't let you make an error or leave a field empty or forget something. It makes us go back and get it right before it'll allow us to validate or print or do those types of things. So it's a good idea. CIT is not a report, it's a meeting. And we need to be having that interaction, and again, everybody needs to be involved, sales and F&I. The general manager should be there, and if it was my store, to be a part of a save a deal meeting, not just that's all we're talking about. Remember the fresh fish rule, and that is after 3 days, deals are bad, and if they're sitting in your office for more than 3 days, I want to know, somebody's going to be looking for it, hopefully, and we need to be able to tell them why it's there and what's going to be going on with it. Use checklists with every touch. I don't know, a best practice is checklists coming from sales department. So the sales department brings a deal to F&I, they're looking at the deal before it comes into F&I. They're making sure that the driver's license is there, the VINs are correct, the mileage odometers information is there. They're kind of going through that. If that's not happening at your store, be proactive, create a checklist of what you want, what's important to you, and I would suggest anything that's reoccurring, a problem that you see over and over, put that on the checklist and sell it to the sales manager. Would you, let's get our salespeople dialed in. Would you mind going through this checklist before you bring a deal to me? Not everybody's going to do it, but hey, if they will, great. Let's make it happen.
You should try to make that happen. It's a great topic for a sales meeting. Introduce it if you don't have one, and tighten it up if you do. And then after you do it en masse, then if you have individual offenders, bring them outside individually and sit them in your office, close the door, and have a conversation with them.
And then we need checklists
coming. That's management.
Yeah, and then we need checklists coming out of F&I too, like a customer, a checklist for funding, a checklist for STIPs if we need it, different things that we need to make sure that we've got the deal right. It's ready to go to accounting.
A really proactive dealership, if a score is less than, let's say, 650, I've been in dealerships where we just got the STIPs right up front on all those people. So we had them if we needed them. If we don't, we just leave them in the deal.
Next is confirm before you print. It's an awfully fundamental thing, but boy, we still see it happening all the time where we print a deal and then we've got bad information. And
I moved away from that address 3 years ago, John.
Yeah. Or the name isn't like it is on the title. Different things we don't check, and then it causes us issues. Got to get that on there for it to move. Review it. We talked about this earlier, but it's a good practice to review the documents. Let me just review one more time before I let you go, and go through and take a look. And make sure that you haven't left something off or the customer has missed a signature. We will highlight and we do things to direct the customer to where they want to sign, but on forms there are multiple signatures, and sometimes they don't catch them all, and we got to make sure that they're there. Talked about that already, and then I keep saying it, but when is the best time? Do it now.
Cash it today.
Okay.
CIT, cash it today.
Amen. So, how often should we have a daily CIT meeting?
How much is free coffee?
Every day. We should do it every day. And you should be organized and know how many deals are sitting in your office versus deals that were written. That's a float report. It's older than dirt, but it's a good thing to have.
If you want to get some impact, take the deals that are around your office and the F&I department, add up the money for both the payoffs and the funding amount, and get an idea what the daily float is just from your office. I think you'll be surprised, because if we don't put a number to that, we don't realize how much we're impacting our boss, the dealer.
I see deals where dealerships that'll have, not thousands of dollars, millions of dollars in CITs, millions. Now, I have the guy who invented the fresh fish rule was a DD dealer, dealer development Ford dealer that became a dealer back in the early 70s. And he ran his, he taught me that fresh fish rule because he ran his dealership like he did, when he first started out, when cash flow was an issue. And that's where that comes from. It would be hard for me to tolerate $3 million or of 1.5, or the world record I saw was 5 million in CITs. 5 million. And in that dealership, there were 2 deals that were over 100 days old. 100. I don't even know how that happens.
Somebody could retire certainly very comfortably on the interest on that $5 million. if they had it in the bank.
Well, the dealership was making payments.
Exactly.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whoa.
All right, questions, comments, concerns, don't all speak up at once. Please try to be orderly as you ask them. We had chaos on the last
The last couple of calls
webinar.
have been
Yes, so anybody,
almost overwhelming with the response.
any comments, questions, concerns?
You know, the fresh fish rule is kind of like the my bad banana rule. After a few days, those bananas start looking pretty rotten, moldy, and have some fur growing on them. So you don't want to get to that point with your contracts.
Well, if there are no questions or comments, thank you everybody for joining. Appreciate your time today. Have a great rest of your day. And
the takeaways are, go from WEO to WEO-UO, and also get those CIT meetings together with everybody.
yeah,
Make that happen today.
see you everybody.
Thank you.